Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Hyper Theory podcast, a new podcast exploring philosophy, science, art, and more. Today, we're joined by Andrés Gómez Emilsson, who is a consciousness scientist slash philosopher slash word doesn't even exist. He runs the Qualia Research Institute in San Francisco, which is a research center that is aiming to revolutionize the future science of consciousness. This is beyond our current understandings of neuroscience and psychology, and looking to figure out how it is that we actually feel and experience anything at all. This is what the word qualia means. We had a great chat while he stayed with me in London on Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year. I can say it because I'm Jewish. We spoke about lots of things, but I particularly enjoyed, as a musician, when we touched on the connection between consciousness and music. Alongside trying to develop this new science of experience, his research center exists both with the purpose to be able to eliminate suffering across the entire sentient world and to attempt to explore, access, and create previously unexperienced realms of consciousness. This is Hyper Theory, Episode 1, Andrés Gómez Emilsson. So, we've been hanging out for a few hours, but now, say hello.
Hello. Good to meet you, Alex. Thank you for letting me stay at your place.
Yeah.
Very convenient.
Very welcome. Would you introduce yourself to me?
Yeah.
For the sake of the
audience.
People that may be present.
My name is Andrés Gómez Emilsson, one of the co-founders of the Qualia Research Institute, where we study consciousness from a point of view of philosophy of mind, neuroscience, and neurotechnology. And we follow, the abolitionist project. I mean, the objective of getting rid of suffering in the long-term future. And I work on figuring out how to get rid of intense suffering, increase baseline, and achieve new heights of happiness.
Okay. Wow. So how did you come to this? How did you get here?
Well, I describe myself as hyper-philosophical. I get a bit the feeling you're probably also on the spectrum of hyper-philosophia. Always wondering about the nature of reality and who I am and why we're here.
Yeah, I may potentially be susceptible to that, yes.
And for a long time, I just thought physics and science would just get all the answers.
Yeah.
But
did you have like a militant sort of atheist phase, like a Richard Dawkins type?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I feel like it's a rite of passage.
I think so, yeah. I think probably between the ages of 12 and 16.
Yeah.
I love, there's a cassette. I don't know if it's for real, but I saw it on Reddit, a little cassette that says the Bible as read by a smug 14-year-old atheist or something like that.
Yeah. So then you became disillusioned by this, or something else?
I tried marijuana and I had an ego death, which was kind of unusual. I mean, it hasn't happened since. It just happened once for whatever reason. I mean, I've taken marijuana many times, but when I was 16, just the fourth time I tried weed, just my ego dissolved. I quote unquote kind of became an infinite ocean of consciousness. It was very strange, but it's not that I think a lot of people would probably have that experience and they would be just convinced that oh my God, I am the ocean of consciousness or something.
Sure. Yeah.
For me, it was more like a proof of concept that my original feeling of identity was just one of many possible identities.
Okay. So you were still beta testing the infinity of consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was like a very strong feeling of like oneness. It was like, well, we're all the same sea of consciousness. But then
did it feel like it was something that you were becoming, or did it feel like it was something that you already were?
It felt like I had always been that.
Yeah.
But I would forget or something like that. Like when the image was like, I was in I first saw myself as a little box. And then I noticed there was like an ocean of consciousness inside the box.
Yeah.
And I realized it was also outside the box. And then I realized it was the same.
And it was the box.
And it was also the box, yes.
Yeah.
And then my friend was also a box.
Yeah.
But with the same emotion inside.
But also all the space outside the box.
Exactly.
Well. Yeah.
So very Hindu. I mean, it's like...
Yeah.
Where they talk about like, you're a balloon, then the balloon pops, and the air inside and outside was already the same air anyway.
Yeah. Well, and in Hinduism as well, the term yoga, people mistake it as meaning as deriving from yoke, to bring together, but that's not actually what the word means. The word means like the recollection of the constantly existing oneness of yourself and the infinite universe, which is primarily conscious, because in Asian sort of metaphysics, consciousness is inbuilt into notions of the physical world. The two are interrelated fundamentally. Like whenever you're looking into the universe, you're also looking into the mind and the soul, or whatever, the Atman, whatever you want to call it. Yoga, not like hatha yoga, not stretching, like the practices of yoga, the path of being a Hindu, which is like a Western way of interpreting. Like they weren't calling themselves Hindus, these people sort of how many thousands of years ago in the forest universities that we've clumped together to now determine as Hinduism. This path that they've sort of drawn out, encouraged for people. The practice of it means remembering. It means recalling you're already connected. So you're not trying to gain a connection. You're not trying to become one with the universe. You're just remembering that you already are. So that seems like a similar scaffolding for your experience.
Yeah, very much so. It was very confusing, but there was a sense of remembering, definitely.
It's like, this again, like, of course, like, yeah. I definitely had those kinds of experiences myself. It reminds me as well of the kind of Platonic realm of forms, like, and the theory goes that Plato was like taking psychedelics as well. So, not to overemphasize, like, the tool is just the tool. It's not, the outcome. But they, at the Eleusinian Mysteries, where Plato and a bunch of others would come and congregate, there's not much information about what they would do, but there's like a recording that they would drink something called, maybe mispronouncing this, but called some kykeon, which when they've done sort of physical analysis of the bowls and stuff that they had, they found that it had ergot in it. So it would have had like LSD type properties. And so, this Platonic idea, Plato's idea that all knowledge is remembering, that we can't learn anything new, that every time we gain an insight or an understanding, we're remembering something from before we were born. We were in this eternal realm of forms. The forms are the essential, I'm sure you know all this, but the essential components of reality. And I don't know, just that experience seems similar to that kind of both the Hindu idea and that kind of trippy Platonic idea of we have experienced everything before and always almost. And so when we come to understanding, we're just remembering, we're just going back to a place almost that we've been to. But anyway, please continue.
No, essentially I realized like, well, the feeling of who I am is an adjustable parameter, and it's just one of many, right?
Yeah.
And then it's not that I became convinced right away that we are all one, but I realized, well, that's a possible way of feeling the world. And then I thought like, well, okay, let's do a serious philosophy and see if we can prove that we are all one in a more rigorous way. I ended up having like some, what I thought like were pretty compelling arguments based on continuity, the absence of a possible, what I called identity carrier. I thought, I mean, essentially even before like reading other people's work on the matter, yeah, kind of like the whole argument of the sheep of the CEOs, and then like thought experiments about mind melding and duplication and teleportation, and concluding that like, well, actually it makes no sense for an individual to actually be fundamentally separate from the rest of the universe. And then I think for like about 4 years, my life mission was like, well, I'm going to convince everybody that we're all one consciousness, and that's just going to solve the problems of the world. That was
hippie fuck.
Yeah, super hippie. But without knowing that it was like a well-trodden path. Like, or like that Hinduism was a thing. Like I was so ignorant of all of that.
Yeah.
Of course, then I learned about that, read the Bhagavad Gita, we had like that phase. But then, in parallel, I think like around the age of 17, I encountered David Pearce's writings. But then it wasn't until like I was 20, 21 that I actually met him, took his writings way more seriously.
Yeah.
And then I just shifted because, I mean, of course, like I think like personal identity is like a very, very important topic.
Yeah.
But I just realized, I mean, like the big realization is if you suffer from chronic pain, it doesn't matter if you realize we're all one.
Yeah. Well, how amazing it is for you or I to have this, incredible understanding and experience that we're all one, but then there's like tens of thousands of people dying of malaria constantly. And it's a more pressing, urgent thing to attend to. So just to our listeners, obviously David Pearce is like a huge inspiration for both of us, personal friend. Very lucky to be able to know him as a great dude. And,
a good bloke.
It's a strange combination, both an incredibly inspiring thinker and just a great guy. But yeah, to our audience, who is David Pearce? What is Pearcean philosophy? What about it struck you?
I encountered him actually by searching about psychedelics. I think like it was like, or what are like intelligent writings about like LSD or something. And I think I encountered a Good Drug Guide, which he wrote. I mean, essentially, he was trying to write something practical that people could use to improve their well-being that goes beyond kind of like psychiatry advice and psychiatry prescription drugs. Essentially, it's just like a very, very good critical outlook on what are the drugs available for treating various kinds of mood disorders and pain issues.
One sec. Sorry, I'm just going to have to pause it for a second because I'm running out of memory. I'm just going to delete some software. Cool. All right. We're back in business.
Awesome.
All right. So
you got some extra space.
Yeah.
Which is ironic in that like it translates into time.
Yeah.
So extra time.
Yeah. We've just computationally proved that Einstein was right.
Exactly.
Space and time are one. Okay, so you were saying you discovered David Pearce. So we were talking about who is David Pearce, what are his ideas, and you were talking about the Good Drug Guide.
Yeah. I mean, essentially it just sounded like very no-nonsense advice, very, very reasonable, very well researched. And it just like ends with this like very incredible quote, kind of like working towards a drug-free future, which is kind of hilarious. Like after he talks about all of these drugs, right? And he just says like, in the future, ideally we will be genetically engineered such that our default baseline will be so good, the thought of contaminating it with external drugs will just not occur to us. Taking any drug will just be immoral, actually, because it's just going to perturb you from your optimal state.
Yeah.
I thought that was like very compelling. I hadn't heard of anybody think like that. I mean, honestly, I think like at the time already, I was pretty contrarian when it comes to things like genetic engineering. Like I thought people's arguments against it weren't very compelling. So I think I already had kind of like some proclivities towards like accepting that sort of argumentation. But that was just kind of like my first encounter. But then like at the age of 20 or 21, I read way more from his stuff. Like the Hedonistic Imperative is his main or his starting work. I also read opioids.com. I mean, I recommend, and mdma.net.
Yeah. What else is there that he owns? He sold weed.com, I believe.
He had weed.com?
I believe, yeah.
My gosh.
Weed.com, something like that. And he sold it. I hope he's okay with me for a large sum of money, and then was just able to take his friends on a trip at the Galapagos.
Oh, he hasn't told me that. I'll have to ask him.
Yeah, I mean, aside from obviously, at least I think you and I are in agreement that his ideas, there's some of the strongest, most important ideas in the contemporary thought space. Aside from that, in terms of like just being savvy and a genius, like he invested in the internet before, when the internet was becoming a thing, and he bought all the drug domains and tons of other domains and servers, and that's sort of how he's managed to survive and get a lot of money and be very intelligent about how he was adapting to the internet.
I think he got something like 2,500 domains or something. Yeah. But very carefully selected. Things like oxycontin.com. I mean, like it would anticipate the name of big like pharmaceutical drugs, so that pharma representatives would then reach out to him, pretending to be some poor girl who's like 16 years old or something, trying to get the domain for cheap. But in practice, I think he would have to sell it much more, for a lot more money. But very early. I mean, like HeadWeb is kind of like the central node of the network, headweb.com. That started in 1996, right? I mean, he wrote the Hedonistic Imperative in 1995, and then he started the kind of the empire of interconnected websites.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know that much about him, like until, I read a couple of his big essays and the Hedonistic Imperative, and then invited him to give a talk at Stanford, at the Stanford Transhumanist Association. And then, finally was able to talk at depth. I just found a tremendous resonance with his vision, which is getting rid of suffering. I mean, he even has like this very beautiful phrase of the world's last unpleasant experience will be a precisely datable event.
Yeah. So, basically David's ideas are he's an abolitionist. So he believes that and argues that what we ought to do, what we should do is work toward abolishing all suffering, physical and mental suffering. And he believes the way of doing that is through a confluence of technology, genetic technology, biotechnologies, high-tech solutions to eradicating all suffering. In the same way that he argues about anesthetic. Before anesthetic was invented, the idea of medical procedure and operating on people with something like that was out of the question, unthought of, until it was actually invented and discovered. And then once you're able to eliminate that physical pain, then why on earth would you ever go back? Why on earth, once you have anesthetic, would you ever perform a surgery on someone without anesthetic? So using that as a kind of example for medicine as a project that is encompassing the entire world. And this is the human and animal kingdom as well. So he believes in paradise engineering, that we should intervene. So completely contrary to David Attenborough's law, shall we call it, of not intervening those kinds of traditional nature documentary style occurrences of awfulness happening throughout nature. He believes we should intervene upon and move the natural world away from things like predation and starvation, and also toward happiness and bliss and pleasure and meaning. And then I guess the third thing is, so David is a negative utilitarian, so that means that to him suffering is more wrong than happiness is good. However, as a kind of pressingness, you deal with the suffering first, but there is an incredible interest in bliss and happiness and super happiness and varieties of experience, because obviously David had a lot of experience with psychedelics, and that's sort of informed, similar to what you were saying, sort of these kinds of different modalities of what consciousness could be. And yeah, so I'd say David's ideas are threefold. One, as an abolitionist, so believes we shouldn't shy away from trying to abolish all physical and mental suffering. Two, thinks that a high-tech solutions are the way to do that. And then three, additional to the elimination of suffering is the goal of the propagation of happiness and bliss for humans and for animals. So that's David. It's basically.
It's a very good summary. I think like personally, I mean, of course, like he would enjoy, a lot of pleasure. I think he found MDMA to be fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he will say the overriding ethical obligation is to get rid of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, like, pragmatically, to get humans to actually, work on the vision, you can't be, preaching anti-natalism.
Yeah.
Like, essentially, for evolutionary selection pressures, if there's some people who are like against having kids and they don't have kids in protest of the Darwinian world, that just means that the proclivity to be compassionate will just die out. I mean, like, it's kind of very counterproductive. You just have to assume that there's going to be life lovers, and then you have to ally with them and make sure that it walks towards an ethical direction.
Mm-hmm.
I found that pragmatism, ruthless pragmatism, to be very inspiring as well. That, like, in retrospect, so many anti-natalists, negative utilitarians are unfortunately really kind of virtue signaling. I mean, it's like they're disgusted with suffering and life, but they're choosing a path that will obviously not work, and if anything, seems to backfire. Terrible PR. So that I really appreciate that, like, even though he's so hardcore about, like, negative utilitarianism, in practice, he ends up actually looking very much like a classical utilitarian.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a strict negative utilitarian. Ultimately, I'm agnostic. I mean, I just think, like, this is more kind of from the Quality Research Institute perspective, but essentially we think that we were talking about earlier, every given experience corresponds to a mathematical object, and then the features of the object will correspond to the phenomenology.
Right. So basically, my understanding as someone who's not very good at maths to the audience. So the idea is that, like, as you said, you run a research institute.
Yes.
The Quality Research Institute.
Yes.
So, which is...
Yes, I mean, essentially we have those, I mean, the mission of getting rid of intense suffering, increasing baseline and achieving new heights. But then also we do, like, philosophy of mind, neuroscience, and neurotech.
So it's a kind of combinatory philosophical scientific study into consciousness, similar to trying to basically be what chemistry was to alchemy for our current understanding of conscious experience.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, the current understanding of consciousness is equivalent to the alchemy of 1600 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure. Like, you can mix these two chemicals, you get, like, something bubbly, but, like, what is actually going on?
We have some words that we think correspond to the bubbles, some machines that we can run some things through, but that's about it.
You can, like, the concept of, like, acids and bases is there, but, like, we have no idea why, right?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
And most of the patterns between them as well. Beyond that,
completely,
So if we think about the science of chemistry as understanding molecules, interaction between molecules, being able to talk about them, understand what they're composed of, how they interact with each other scientifically, in a way that you can both gain meaningful knowledge about it, compare it, do things with it. The notion of a scientific understanding of something pre-chemistry, we had alchemy, and people attempting to, even Isaac Newton was incredibly interested in alchemy. But it's the same goal. It's the same goal of trying to understand the physical world, trying to understand these chemicals, these molecules, how they interact with each other, trying to do things with them. But alchemy was not developed enough to understand fully in the way that we do now in chemistry, the patterns and the quantitative nature of chemical material, that now we've been able to build a science that has complex understandings and theories and evidence behind it for what these chemicals are, how they interact with each other, etc., etc. So if we think about our understanding of consciousness, experiences, colors, feelings, emotions, joy, bliss, pain, hatred, and what those things actually feel like, what those things actually are like, our understanding of that, the argument goes, is akin to what alchemy was. Basically, guesswork, not really knowing how these things link together. And so the idea is, what can we do to turn this into a kind of chemistry of experience? So as you say, we maybe now are starting to understand the building blocks and the amino acids, as it were, in the metaphor of consciousness, but most of the work is still to be done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we think maybe the initial Rosetta Stone, the thing that's kind of where we get a lot of traction is valence.
Yeah.
I mean, for a lot of consciousness researchers, I mean, valence, for those who don't know, it's the pleasure-pain axis. That's why, how good or bad an experience feels. For a lot of researchers, they think valence is just a very complex thing. It's going to have these like high-level evaluation of the value of an experience. Or a lot of researchers think it has something to do with reinforcement learning, like reward and prediction errors.
Right.
We think like actually all of that is incidental. Like according to our theory, you're going to have like very pleasant experiences that are completely predictable. Like there's some correlation between like reward and pleasure, but they're not the same thing.
Sure.
But no, in our theory, essentially very pleasant experiences are actually very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme cases are things like the jhanas, or like these very highly concentrated states of consciousness. And, people describe them as like, the sphere of infinite space, for example.
Yeah.
Or infinite consciousness, which has like no content, but like consciousness aware of itself.
Yeah.
Consciousness without an object. Sometimes they describe it. And if you enter those states, they're very blissful. They're like incredibly fulfilling and beautiful, even though they have almost no content.
Sure.
They're rejuvenating. So what's going on with that? My current understanding is that symmetry is definitely involved. And symmetry essentially is kind of a proxy for even stress, like essentially like regularize the stress, because when you have a more symmetrical state of consciousness, essentially the stress is more evenly distributed.
So symmetry of what? And what exactly do you mean by symmetry?
Exactly. It's kind of tricky because it's not symmetry of, let's say, the stimuli. I mean, that is correlated, but the thing that really matters is symmetry of the mathematical object that corresponds to consciousness.
Sure. So this is what we were, original point here. So my understanding of it as someone who's not so mathematically inclined, more verbally inclined, as we were talking about the Ashkenazi, Happy New Year, by the way.
Oh, Happy New Year. Yes.
Shana Tova. But so my understanding is that whatever you think of maths, whatever you think of, whether you think you're like Max Tegmark, you think the universe is maths, or you think maths is just a, really convenient tool that we've invented, or whatever. Maths as something that, whatever its metaphysical status, is something that can represent things, and represent things in a very detailed way. Experiences as things that exist in the world with details and features of them should be representable by maths. So for any given experience, we're talking about valence because it is the kind of the go-to modality of experience. Arguably, it's the primary modality of experience. But so, you think of, let's take an experience. So sledging down a hill when you're 7 and it's snowing. And your mum's calling you in because she's made food and it's going to go cold. That's almost uterinely blissful memory. It's not just because when the reason valence came along as a concept to replace pleasure is it's deeper, it's richer, it incorporates feelings of meaning or that are associated with bliss rather than just sort of aroused pleasure that kind of give hedonism a bad name. People think of people shooting up on heroin and that's kind of where it ends.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so you take a given experience, so that's it could be anything. There are other high valence experiences, seeing a child being born. If you listening have never had a child, finding your keys when you thought you'd lost them, any variety of experience. Just take one. So sliding down a hill, the memory of that, that experience. For that experience, there should exist a mathematical object that's isomorphic to that experience.
Yeah.
So that means to say that you can represent that experience not only mathematically, but geometrically. So you could have a mathematical shape, mathematical representation that represents and is corresponding to every felt aspect of that experience.
That's right.
So if you take that as a starting point, if you have these shapes or these ways of mathematically modeling experiences, then you could take sliding down a hill, and then you could take finding your keys when you thought you'd lost them. Then you could take having your heart broken by an unrequited love. Then you could take stubbing your toe and take all of these mathematical shapes, all of these mathematical models for them, and then compare them. And then that's when you start to look for patterns. And so in the same way as chemistry started to do, okay, let's model this chemical. Let's look at its bases. Let's look at its components, and let's represent it in a way that we can, so I feel like a lot of, people may be put off by this because, an experience is an experience and you're sort of trying to unweave the rainbow, and perhaps it's like, it precludes any spirituality, or it's a kind of deadening of consciousness. But I don't think there's any inherent metaphysical interpretation of what you're doing. The maths could either be an explanation for these experiences, or you could just view it as a tool, and most of the original hyper-religious people were mathematicians and saw maths as looking into the mind of God anyway. So I think that drawback that a lot of people have with it, because a lot of people that would be interested in this kind of stuff, I think are prone to spiritual belief. I think that kind of, I completely understand that kind of reservation, but yeah, I would just hasten at this point to say that it's not, it's a real limitation or a real issue. Yeah. So you're using maths, whatever you conclude, explanation for consciousness. You're using maths as a tool to make experiences what we call operationalizable. Something that we can not only understand, but do something about. So yeah. So in the same way that you had chemists comparing their models of chemicals and suddenly having a science of chemistry, that's what you're trying to do with consciousness.
Yes.
How accurate is that?
No, that's very good. That's very good. Yeah, and to your point, we're definitely not like against spirituality in any way. First of all, if it is true, that there's let's say other dimensions, if dimensions you experience on DMT or something are actually out there and you're interacting with them, qualia formalism, which is this idea that every experience corresponds to a mathematical object, can still be true. It's just, maybe there's other dimensions of consciousness too. It just, maybe they have different physics, but ultimately they will be mathematically describable.
Yeah.
And so even if God exists, I think God will follow mathematical properties.
Yeah.
The mind of God is made of math as well.
In a way that's not necessarily reducible. It can just be a way of interrogating it, a way of understanding it, a way of representing it.
Exactly.
In the same way you might want to represent God through a painting, or through a song, or through it's a different way of representing it. One that you can do more with in this context, but
you can model it. You can find, let's say, how to get rid of the suffering in it.
Well, yeah, you can do more with it in a technological sense, in a biomedical sense, which is sort of how I guess how you found yourself to this through David Pierce kind of ideas.
I mean the concept, kind of like formalizing it. It's called the qualia formalism of the mathematic, the isomorphism between experiences and mathematical objects. That's from Mike Johnson, my co-founder, the Qualia Research Institute. And then he also postulated the symmetry theory of valence.
Yeah, to our listeners, check out the Principia Qualia, which is Mike's magnum opus, which explores all of this with some incredible visual representations of what we're talking about. But please continue.
I mean, not just to be the symmetry theory of valence presented in Principia Qualia. It's really kind of just like a educated guess, and it's very, very high level. But then, we decided to create this institute, and since then, we've become way more kind of concrete to the point that we actually can make precise empirically testable predictions. That we can investigate with neuroscientific tools like fMRI and EEG, and also neurotechnology like body vibration and audio and stroboscopic stimulation. And so far, every way in which I have tested the symmetry theory of valence, it seems to be true. Like harmony, for example, is one kind of symmetry. It's like symmetry over time. And synchrony as well is a certain kind of symmetry. And for example, on psychedelic states of consciousness, when you experience pretty symmetrical patterns, usually they are higher valence. Then we experience chaotic, dissonant, out of tune, irregular patterns. Pain, for example, tends to be kind of spiky and irregular and chaotic, whereas kind of very pleasurable tactile sensations tend to be made of regular harmonious wave without blockages.
So when you say that, that's from fMRI,
it's a mixture. So it's mostly phenomenology, just
people describing what it's like.
I mean, there's a wonderful book called Seeing That Freeze, which is
is right there in the suitcase, right?
It's in my suitcase.
Can I grab it?
By Rob Urbia.
Okay. I was looking at this earlier.
Huh?
I was spying that this book earlier.
Very, very good book, full of kind of instructions for how to achieve samadhi and very beautiful states of consciousness. But it's very interesting. I mean, he talks about how there's a correspondence between suffering and patterns of tension and irregularities.
Right.
And how deep samadhi is actually a state where there's no irregularities in your consciousness. It's actually just a smooth geometric field.
Right.
And so there's kind of a lot of converging points.
That this feels similar to the kind of Epicurean kinds of his idea of what is it? Oh, this is my philosophy BA. Kinesthetic pleasure, I believe, is the ultimate form of pleasure which comes from the absence of desire. So it's a similar kind of idea that when you strip things away and you're free of perturbations or free of desires, that is that kind of smoothness. That's that kind of absence. And I guess in the Buddhist and the Hindu traditions, they call it, nothingness or the clear light of sort of nothingness. There's that kind of
exactly
experience.
In the book, for example, he talks about how if you pay close attention to your phenomenology, any craving manifests as a pattern of tension in your energy body.
Interesting. That's exactly what I say.
You can actually reduce a craving by relaxing parts of your body that are tense. There's hacks that way. And exactly when you're in a fully desireless state of consciousness that is very pleasant, there's no irregular patterns of tension in your energy body. And it's very esoteric sounding, but really it's just phenomenology. But then also from the point of view of neuroimaging, if you analyze the brainwaves of somebody in what's called meditative cessation, which is like one of the peak states of meditation.
Yeah.
Essentially, there's a tremendous amount of like coherence across all channels and across all frequencies. That corresponds to like a very high amount of regularity and symmetry. And similarly, if you analyze the brainwaves of somebody on 5-MeO DMT, which is a very powerful psychedelic that makes you feel that everything is one and it's very, very blissful. Likewise, the brainwaves are like incredibly regular and harmonious.
Harmonious in what sense?
Yeah. So harmony in what's called the one-dimensional case, which is like most of music theory, is literally where you have distribution of sounds on the spectrum where you have like a fundamental, which is like the lowest frequency. There's a frequency peak, let's say like 400 hertz or something.
Yeah.
And then you also have what's called the partials, which is like additional like notes.
Right.
And for them to be harmonious means that they are like integer multiples of the fundamental.
Yeah.
So like if you have like a 400 hertz tone, you will also have like some energy in the 800 hertz frequency, and then someone like the 1200.
Like the overtone
exactly
harmonic. Right.
When you say like the overtones are harmonic, it means that they're integer multiples, because you also have like inharmonic instruments, for example, tubular bells or xylophones, where like if let's say the fundamental is 400 hertz, maybe the overtones might be something like 650 or like some other random. That's why they sound weird. I mean, they're kind of like out of tune. It's very difficult to make a musical scale for them.
Right.
And musical scales, in a way, the way they work is by aligning the harmonics.
So how do those inharmonious notes differ mathematically to the harmonious?
Oh, it means that the overtones are not perfect integer multiples.
Right. And what's an integer multiple?
Oh, so I mean, as I was like, explaining, like if you have like a 400 hertz, you will also have the overtone being like 800. So 800, 1200, 1600, and so on.
They kind of fold into each other. Yeah.
Exactly. If you look at the waveform, essentially you get these symmetrical like wave packets.
Right.
Where like the waves perfectly aligned with each other, and like you can segment it out, and that's why it is like symmetry over time.
And if you represent them geometrically, do you get fractals?
No, you would get a simple, let's say like simple polygons.
Right.
Like
this kind of thing.
Yes.
So you can't see, but I'm holding up the symbol of the Quality Research Institute.
Yeah.
Which is a very beautiful, shiny 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 eight-sided shape.
Yeah. I mean, there are like 8 colors.
Octahedron.
Octagon.
Yeah. See like little people fighting inside it. Yeah. So, and then I'm guessing inharmonic series don't generate such symmetrical shapes.
They don't repeat.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you take like 2 numbers at random, the minimum common multiple will be very large.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't fit with each other properly.
Yeah. And then there's the experience of inharmony as well. So they sound discordant, they sound jarring.
Exactly.
Whereas you play a harmony together and it sounds pleasing, it sounds concordant.
Yeah. A lot of it also has to do with beat patterns, where you have like, if you have 2 frequencies that are close to each other but not perfectly exactly the same. If you have like 400 hertz and 405, let's say, they will start overlapping in weird ways, where like the amplitude will go up and down and up and down.
That's where you get this sort of the binaural kind of technology stuff.
Yeah. And if you only have 1 beat pattern, it's fine because you can track it and like it's still somewhat symmetrical. But when you have like, let's say, like, you know, if you take like the notes in a piano and like use the palm of your hand, you know, to press a bunch of notes that are like next to each other.
Yeah.
It sounds very discordant, right? That's because there's like an intractable number of a lot of beat patterns interacting with each other, creating these chaotic structures. And that does not repeat for like a very long while. And the brain just doesn't know how to like segment that out into like easily comprehensible packets. So it's actually very stressful to listen to that.
So the Cure, you've done now experiments with neurotechnology with feedbacking.
We've done a lot of research on like body vibration and audio and visual stimulation. Essentially, we were trying to create the music theory for body vibration.
Right.
I find that fascinating because you can buy like a massage chair, right? Mm-hmm. But if you buy a massage chair, usually they sell it with like a few settings, right? It's like, oh, like setting 1 to 5. And it's like, they're like slightly different patterns, right? Like that's not what we're doing. Like we're doing something much more interesting, which is using a system where you can like translate out any waveform, like essentially any sound, into vibration.
Mm-hmm.
So like it doesn't even need to be made of like pure tones. It could be like literally any, and you can take like the sound of a train and translate it into vibration. But the point is that we've explored a lot of kinds of vibrations. You know, I spent like 6 months researching these and trying it, you know, hours and hours on myself with all kinds of things. And what happens is that the vast majority of vibrations are actually like unpleasant. They're like anxiogenic, you know, they make you like feel weird and, or dissociated or
nauseous,
exactly. Or typically it's like
dizzy.
Anxiety, dizzy,
physical sensations as well as mental.
But if you input like essentially like what's called like variable amplitude harmonic sounds, essentially harmonic combinations that go up and down slowly over a couple minutes, those are like deeply relaxing and pleasant and like rejuvenating, and they're all essentially like have like super high levels of harmony.
So what do you think this means for consciousness?
Essentially, it means that pleasure and pain seems to follow like mathematical properties, and it has to do with symmetry, regularity, and harmony. And I mean, I have the, you know, mathematical theory behind this, which is more sophisticated. I mean, how to describe it is like music is like the true mathematics of pleasure and pain is kind of this high dimensional object. Music is a projection of it from a certain angle. And then like vibrations are like a different projection of it. And then like how light stimulation feels good or bad is another projection.
Yeah.
But they're all reflections of this like underlying mathematical shape, which encodes just how symmetrical a stimuli is.
Which, when represented as shapes, would create these kinds of repeating patterns rather than, if it was more asymmetrical, the shapes would break down. You wouldn't get these kinds of repeating squares, repeating polygons.
Exactly. You get something that's constantly shifting and doesn't converge.
So the when represented, the underlying mathematical structures of more meaningful, more blissful, more pleasant experiences are mathematically, you think, more symmetrical, musically more harmonious, and geometrically more repeating and geometric, for want of a better term.
Yeah.
Interesting. So using music is the way of looking at this, you know, what does that mean that there is one objective, ultimate piece of music that would be the most beautiful piece of music, that would be the most symmetrical, that we're all striving to? Because it seems to me that there's, and this is maybe where I depart somewhat from David, you know, where I have my reservations, just on the broadness of experience and how valence indubitably incredibly important, ethically incredibly important.
Yes.
You know, especially with the elimination of the sort of -10, with -10 being the worst possible experience, those kinds of experiences for sure. But when just considering value and exploring the state space of consciousness and the universe, you know, looking at it musically, what we're drawn to surely in music is massive varieties of experience, massive combinations of experience. People enjoy music that follows irregular patterns sometimes, or incorporates difficult emotions, or, you know, has a personality to it, has a uniqueness to it that maybe departs from, I don't know. So would there be one ultimate piece of music that would be following and representing these highly symmetrical shapes, that would be the ultimate piece of music? would be representative of the most optimal, the most desirable experience. Or you think of something like Rachmaninoff, opus, and it's not that. It's not following some ultimate, representing some ultimate hyper symmetrical geometric shape, but in its twists and its turns, in its harmony, there is still massive geometry, massive symmetry. So is it? Yeah, I guess my question is, would it be the case that there would be one sort of ultimate piece of music, one sort of ultimate way of experiencing that things are striving towards, or more that there could be this variety of music, variety of experiences that would just, when mapped, follow twisting and turning geometric patterns?
I mean, I do think there's probably like a hierarchy of heaven, as it were. And the upper ranges will be very, very, very symmetrical, but also very, very energized. And that's kind of the territory of like Janus and 5-MeO DMT. And they are very symmetrical, and like they're more kind of like in the home territory. Why do we enjoy Rachmaninoff? Actually, we have a whole explanation for that. And it involves understanding that essentially the brain also has this thing we call the boredom mechanism. So essentially, when you're experiencing the same thing over and over, your brain evaluates, okay, I'm not learning anything new. And so it injects dissonance so that you don't get stuck in a local maxima. I mean, essentially, if we didn't have the boredom mechanism, we would just like be, staring at a lake or something for all our life.
Which I did first time I took acid. Stared at a lake for 8 hours straight. I mean, before I was going to jump in, I was just...
That's the thing, like, psychedelics disable the boredom mechanism.
Interesting.
Like, you can't take LSD and, like, you're bored.
Yeah.
I mean, you may feel despair or something else, but, like...
You're not bored,
No, you're not bored.
You maybe wish you were bored.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. You wish it was dull.
You wish it back. You wish the mechanism back, yeah. So is that similar in any way to... I don't know, you have a big interest in perfume and smell. My understanding of perfume is that this may be a myth, but my understanding is that in very, very pleasing perfumes, they've found empirically that if they put a tiny, almost like homeopathic, like very small amount of fecal smell in with the beautiful luxurious chemicals, without the people knowing, they actually the experience of beautiful smells with a little bit of shit in them, people report as being more deep and more rich and more satisfying than the experience that has none of the shit.
Well, and it doesn't have to be like fecal. There's like many other like slightly unpleasant, slightly like rough smells, whether it's like sharp, aldehydic, or alcoholic, or spicy, like eugenol. There's like a bunch of slightly off, or cheesy, like rotten cheese. Like there's this thing called valeric acid.
Okay.
Tiny amounts, exactly, make it interesting. But here's the thing, like the reason that works, and also the reason why imperfection in music, or like Rachmaninoff and things like that, is that there's twofold. One is like it's a way of like overcoming the boredom mechanism, but then secondary is like slightly surprising, and then the surprise causes an energy spike. Essentially, whenever you're surprised, you will have like a spike of energy. It intensifies your experience because your brain is trying to figure out, kind of like working over time. It's like, okay, there's something, additional information I don't understand. So, and ultimately the total valence of your experience is a function of the shape, essentially how symmetrical it is, times how energetic it is. So when you add a little bit of something that's surprising, you're going to be multiplying the energy.
Interesting.
You may reducing the valence a little bit, but the overall positive valence, once you take into account the multiplication, maybe much larger.
Make it more like a roller coaster than a merry-go-round.
Exactly. And I mean, you work with music, like you will, here's, something we could predict from first principles, but then it's also empirically the case. The people who like very weird music, right, are people who have already listened to so much other music, but it's kind of like you're at a stage where you need that extra weirdness to not feel bored.
Do you think that's all that there is, though? I mean, so how about, Radiohead or music that feels like people that listen to music that feels like it's incorporating some kind of depth of emotion. Often music maybe people might refer to as sad or depressing. Yeah. I think there's the case to be had that there's music that's exploring sadness and explores bittersweet, vulnerable, and I guess the beauty that can exist in those states. But more what I think's more interesting in this discussion would be music that's not really exploring sadness per se or negative experience, but feels that it not only in being pleasing and being beautiful and being satisfying and maybe representative of some symmetry, not only being exciting and twisting and turning, feels like it's expressing some depth, some personal beauty, something like that. How does that fit into all of this?
There's two things. I mean, first of all, you will prefer music that actually causes resonance in you. So, and you can really only resonate to things you can relate to. Mm-hmm. So like if you've been in a very emotionally mixed mood for a while and you listen to like very happy songs, it sounds fake, right? It's not fake because you can have people who are like just legitimately very happy. Yeah. And they will say like, no, this is very beautiful. But yeah, if you are in a very mixed state, pure happiness sounds fake. But I think it's just like, it just doesn't resonate with you. Mm. But then
interesting. Yeah. So it's about the resonance. Yeah. More than the actual shape of
the stimuli. I mean, and that's why the symmetry theory of valence applies to the shape of the experience, not the shape of the stimuli.
Sure.
It's just that they're correlated.
I think this is maybe some of the issues, some of the drawback, like with this field, because it is so unfamiliar to be incorporating phenomenology into science in this way. We're so glued into thinking about the objects of our inquiry as these fixed, non-experiential things. Yeah. But rerouting it into thinking, well, the symmetry, the harmony has to concord with your own resonance. So if you're in a sad mood or more complex than that, if for whatever reason, what lights you up and makes you feel resonant is some kind of weird, intense, janky techno, or then that would be creative of more resonance and more symmetry. But it's fascinating. Like thinking about things in terms of music. Yeah, and it's more than a metaphor. It is more than a metaphor. There's here an actual, how far you want to go with it, but an actual base scientific theory of how things are actually resonating and harmonizing with each other on a variety of levels and scales. And it's non-scientifically, it's something that I feel in my life. To me, one of the most important things is connection with other people in my personal life, my relationships, and I find that's always what I return to. From a consideration of what feels most meaningful. Yeah, often always is my relationships, and as I've grown older, as I've become more of an adult, in my early relationships, there was a lot more infatuation, a lot more, again, similar to what I was just saying about treating objects as irrespective things out there in the universe, irrespective of an experiential rhythm with them. But as I've got older, my experience of relationships and care and love and connection felt much more rooted in what you call some kind of harmony. Yeah. So I would say like the people that mean the most to me are the people that I feel I resonate with, are people that I feel there's a harmony with. when you speak, it's sort of like music, and maybe improvisational jazz. It takes a while to get there, but it feels like you're sort of doing music together. And then the people that really matter to me are the ones that I feel, for whatever reason, for whatever psychotherapeutic reason why it leads me to feeling like I harmonize with them. And and then that's what is more the music that you create with people, and why there is this ineffable sort of feeling harmony with them. But so I would say in my own life, and I am a musician as well. So obviously I do think about music a lot and incorporate it into my life. But this way of thinking about the world musically, I think is accurate and very beautiful as well.
Yeah, I mean the couple of things to add clarity to this, and everything you said, I agree with and resonate with. Oftentimes you will find that two dissonant sounds put together, they can be co-consonant. That like in an emergent effect, you get a consonant relationship. I think that's also explains why, people who are very sad will enjoy sad music, because the sad music will be a complement to their own dissonance. That together they will form a consonant.
Sure.
And then the last one, which explains the most hardcore music, things like Merzbow or going to a My Bloody Valentine concert. That I understand it as those are patterns that are actually designed to be destructive, that are useful if you're already so messed up that you need to destroy the patterns inside you.
Sure.
If you have suicidal ideations, very heavy intrusive thoughts or something, heavy noise music will shut that down.
Yeah.
So it's still trying to improve valence and harmony. Is just in a completely circuitous way.
Yeah, I'd suggest that I agree, and I think there's more as well that you can expand on with that. I think because I just think I remember a friend of mine, his brother was in a hardcore heavy metal, extreme hardcore band, and he always said that his brother and the people in that band were monks. They were in real life, they were these Zen monks. So I think maybe even if you're not super messed up more than an ordinary person, you have just a traditional psyche and whatever, but you're throwing all this hardcore heavy metal at it. It seems to result in this serenity.
Yeah.
This peaceful. Yeah, I don't know what it's doing, but
it's a wonderful example. I mean, I think my immediate off the top of my head theory there would be it's increasing equanimity.
Yeah.
When very similar to if you're eating super hot peppers once a week or something, you learn to kind of just accept it and not resist it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you translate that to the rest of your life, and you can endure a very intense social awkwardness or very intense cold or something like that. It generalizes. So the Zen, heavy metal, well, it's important to know too, Merzbow, the super famous Japanese noise artist. He's a practicing Jain, and
interesting.
He sleeps 4 hours a day and wakes up, meditates for an hour, and then spends 16 hours producing noise music.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's a vegan activist. This is very interesting person.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's just interesting how he loops back to David, that it's still that kind of impetus, that imperative to, reduce suffering, sentient life, but just a completely different way of going about it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we do what we can, and we do what feels right for us. And yeah. Because I think as well as there's a lot of issues that people may have with this project of the Quality Research Institute, and debates that can be had, whatever, but fundamental about the approach, about what it means, etc., etc. I do think one of more advanced drawbacks or issues, something to consider, not objection, but just something to be considered is taking it step at a time, and obviously picking one variable of experience. We were talking about this before. Picking one variable of experience at a time seems to be okay. Well, you could do that. Okay, so if we're just looking at valence, we're just comparing the valence of experience to experience. We're getting patterns for them. But then when you start to combine valence with perception, with every other aspect of experience, these are words for things that the Inuits may have words for, whatever, all combined together, all interacting with each other, then the task seems potentially incredibly difficult, if not impossible. But we were talking before about actually if this musical way of understanding consciousness holds and works, then it might not actually be such a difficult task.
Yeah.
I want you to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it will be something like qualia variety, as we call it, whether it's like colors or sounds or tactile sensations, will have its associated symmetry groups and then its intrinsic theory as a consequence. And then from that, you will have like joint music theories where like audio-visual, for example, will have a particular way of interacting and being coherent with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That we will be predicated on like what is the overlap of the mathematical symmetries of both.
Yeah.
And then, peak experiences, like let's say DMT, meeting God on DMT or something like that, is precisely the overlap of like all the sensory modalities, where it's like, okay, this is harmonious at the level of light, it's harmonious in sound, it's harmonious in touch.
Mm-hmm.
And when they all come together, that's okay, this is perfect harmony across all the senses.
Right.
Now, because it's just the overlap of all of those, is actually going to be very restrictive. So like in some sense, like, multi-sensory God experience, actually there's only a few of them. Whereas like visually harmonious things, there's like a lot of them. Just like they may not go well together with other senses. And that's part of the beauty of actually like restricting things. Like if your art is just like, let's say, audio and touch.
Yeah.
There are some harmonies there that just don't exist with like visual qualia. So like, and I do value a lot like understanding the entire state space. I mean, I guess like the additional point in the equation is that this connects to kind of like antinatalism. You want not only something that is blissful, but also that is sustainable and can reproduce, right? Because otherwise you will be just outcompeted by things that maybe suffer, but are good at making copies of themselves.
Yeah.
So in the end, you do want kind of the perfect balance between bliss and intelligence and ability to reproduce. And that's not going to be perfect bliss. It's going to be maybe not the best, but it's going to be very interesting and very worthwhile and complex and rich. And I think, ultimately that's what the future is going to be about, finding those compromises.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess within that there would be infinite combinations and infinite possibilities of the state space of consciousness and how these things would interact with each other. But the overarching rules would be fairly limited. It's kind of a sandbox. And I guess, the idea would be like infinite tones, infinite combinations of tones. But actually, when we go into music theory, the rules and the structures that govern them are actually fairly easy to predict. And so that would be the hope with the massive variety of consciousness. You'd basically be able to find the keys and the modulations of pain interacting with love, interacting with hatred, and it wouldn't actually be this monumental, impossible task. It might be a bit easier.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be ultimately very tractable.
Yeah.
Maybe not something you can compute in your head, but definitely something you can compute in a computer and try it out on yourself. And like physics, right? It's like the laws of physics turn out to be surprisingly simple. Of course, they give rise to very strange, chaotic behavior, but like, Maxwell's equations, you can write them in a t-shirt, essentially.
But then the payoff of this, so the point of all of this, you then are able to do this and computationally, understand consciousness, and is then what you can do with it, right? And we're going back to the original thing of David Pearson. It's amazing. And I'm going to go travel the world, tell everyone that we're all this open, big individual, like open individuals, we're all one consciousness. But fuck, actually, I need to stop suffering. Actually, fuck, there's some people with cuts and wounds and tears, and that's much more important to deal with first.
Exactly.
So the QRI and everything we've just been discussing, this potential future way of an emerging way of scientifically mapping, tracking, understanding consciousness. What then will you do with it? What's the point of this? What can you do with it?
Yeah, it's so many things. I mean, one of them, for example, is you can point to this theory at other species. You can probably rank species by how much they suffer. My guess is that some species suffer way more than others by default. Like it may be the case that like crickets are like, it's an unpleasant life because they're full of dissonances and they're always in a dissonant state. They're just trying to minimize it.
I don't think it's real, but it's a supposed recording of crickets chirping was slowed down. And it's incredibly beautiful. Like, a low hum. Maybe
maybe
in a great zen, symmetrical harmonious state of being.
Until we know how much each species suffer, like how are we going to prioritize who to help?
Mm-hmm.
And the same for like things like prioritizing like which diseases to cure. But then the most promising to me is like, it's not only prioritization, it's also it gives you the cure potentially. But it's like in sound, for example, this is one of the things that we've done is like we have these algorithms where we can take a sound, analyze it, identify the dissonances in the sound, and then cancel those out selectively in such a way that you keep as much of the information as possible, but then it's not dissonant anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, I think we will have something like that for experience. Like you would have like an experience analyzer identifies, well, actually your 17th and 19th brain harmonic are in a state of dissonance. So let's like tune down one of those while leaving everything else the same. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I don't feel anxiety for some reason. Like it's going to be very, very precise.
Would that be a genomic change?
It might not even need to be that. Like it might even be like surprisingly something like take this amino acid or something that specifically suppresses that.
Some new neurotechnology that is able to act and change some aspect of the brain.
Exactly.
It's basically a form of psychiatry that's just much more in tune with much more development. I mean, our current psychiatry is like the same as what it was 200 years ago, except just with some new thing that Eli Lilly's pushing.
It's a sledgehammer, right? I mean, it's like SSRIs, they help people, but they're kind of like, they have so many effects and they're like very, very broad. And then like, of course we have things I consider horrible. I mean, again, like maybe they're useful in some extreme circumstances, but things like antipsychotics.
Yeah.
Like high dose antipsychotic ends up feeling kind of like Parkinson's.
Right. And just despite the massive leaps and bounds we've made in neuroscience, and we're not really doing anything massively different when it comes to treating people. And from a social and a more emotional perspective, not in any way considering really, people's lived experiences.
Yeah.
So you would with this computational scientific understanding of consciousness, much more accurately and advancedly be able to it's like precision neurophenomenology. as in to say that you can precisely be able to identify which neurological aspects of your experience are causing you suffering or not, and act on them, and have a cure for things like depression, have a cure for potentially through some kind of technology, some kind of technoscience emerging from this. Yeah,
that's exactly it. Yeah.
And I mean, it does. Talking to David, going back to why we're doing all that. He said to me that ultimately he's most fascinated by just exploring experience and the varieties of experience. And I think, us talking here, there's so much excitement about these varieties of states of experience and exploring that and understanding that. But there is this pressing, urgent concern, of ethically, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
But there seems to be the good fortune that the two hopefully seem to coincide.
I think they're synergistic.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking with David about this today when he's open to it, but he kind of thinks it's like, well, it would be a huge coincidence if like they actually are like go hand in hand. But no, I do think so. And like, they intersect precisely in things like theories of valence or like.
Well, I think it's more than a coincidence. This is a backbone of sort of David's views as well. But before we know anything, before we know 2 + 2 = 4, before any conception of anything, Hinduism, mathematics, logic, reality, we have experience, and the primary way that experience is mediated is valence, is the initial way you experience any experience with all the varieties to it is how enriching, how engaging, how does this feel, how positive, how negative it is. And I think it would be more than a coincidence because that seems to be the fundamental way of experiencing reality, the primary source of all of our knowledge. And if we take some kind of monistic view of the physical universe is conscious or has, some variety of David Chalmers calls, type F monism, some variety of viewing reality where experience is in some way enmeshed with physical reality, then it's not a coincidence. Then we're actually learning something fundamental about the universe when we're interrogating the varieties of experience. Deeper than that, who's to say? I don't know. But it would be more than a coincidence. It would be a reflection of the fundamental nature of everything. I don't know.
I agree.
Again, this musical thing. I remember once, I think you said, or so I had this view as well. Somehow the universe is trying to become music. It's starting off as not music. It's starting off as singularity and emergence of matter and noise and chaos, and quite literally, more than a metaphor, more than just saying, everything is musical. Quite literally, through consciousness, through the arising of the world that we live in, the universe is moving towards a state of being music.
I agree. It sounds completely insane, but I think it's true.
It is true. It is true in a very broad way. Like the harmonies of music, the depth of music, the experience of music, the richness, the aliveness, the three-dimensionality of it. That's what all the molecules in my body and your body and everyone in that chair, everything in Russia invading Ukraine somehow, everything is trying. Maybe someone's playing the snare drum completely wrong and it's going really badly over there. But everything seems to be coalescing together to actually be forming.
I love that. With that,
cool, man.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. It's been fun.
All right. So you can check out Quality Research Institute online.
QRI.org.
Get involved. Thank you, man. That was
thank you.
That was great.
Fantastic.
Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of the Hypertheory podcast. We will be back soon with more interviews with some of the most interesting people in the world, I think, across philosophy, science, and the arts. If you enjoyed hearing about Andreas's work and the QRI, and you live in London, we are hosting an in-person event with the QRI at Ep.1 this Saturday, the 8th of October. All the information will be on the description. This podcast is produced by Starground, so you can follow us on Instagram at StargroundHQ and Hypertheory Podcast. I've been your host, Alex Rose, and we'll see you soon. Bye.